Hello. So this video should be the last one at the moment in regards to the animal allies that the Straw Hats have. Now, this one is mostly going to be about allies by adjacent, so like allies by proxy, because of someone else that is an ally to them, or a potential ally to them, depending on certain circumstances. So, starting off, the first one I have on the list are the Humandrels. Which are, of course, tangentially possibly an ally because of Mihawk. Although, when I had initially started making this list, that was before the Cross Guild had been revealed, and, it was more like, well, at the very least, I knew that Mihawk wasn't a warlord anymore, and it's the possibility of, like, well, depending on where he goes, the Humandrels might go with him. And if they do, then, they were around Zoro a lot, so there's the potential of that. They were around Zoro for 2 years, and he probably trained against them, and probably tangentially got stronger just by fighting against Zoro anyway, as he got stronger fighting against all of them, including the giant one that has the big F-off sword that looks like, Yoru. I think that's anime only, but it's still funny. But one of the things that that I do kind of think would make sense in regards to the Humandrels would be, tangentially there's the possibility that the Humandrels are currently with the Cross Guild with Mihawk, which would make sense in my opinion, just given the circumstances, but a little bit of an iffy thing there. Don't know exactly what they'll end up doing with that. Well, I don't necessarily think Crocodile would have a huge issue with them if they're strong enough to fight. I don't think he'd have a problem. Buggy would be too scared to say anything against them, but there's always the possibility that if it does end up being that the Cross Guild ends up going up against the Straw Hats or having to deal with the Straw Hats, there's the possibility, I would say, that Mihawk may not, like, turn against them and, like, stab Buggy and, Crocodile in the back. I don't think that would happen, but I can see that maybe he's like, no, I don't want to fight. I want to see what this happens, and then I'm going to go fight Roronoa. And like, if Zoro wins the fight against Mihawk, depending on how that goes, it might be like the Humandrels will be like, oh, well, I guess the green one's our new leader now. We'll go follow him. But so there was a tangential one there that I wanted to put them in. Then we go into the next one. And if you're wondering why certain ones are here and certain ones were in the other ones, when it comes to some of the allies for the Straw Hats, it was, okay, this animal, like Tsurume, the giant kraken, that one wasn't, like, tangentially an ally. That one just straight up became Luffy's friend after Luffy, like, conquered it. Uses Conqueror's Haki and everything and made it their ally. Whereas, like, Karu and the Supersonic Duck Squadron, yes, Karu is Vivi's pet. He's her companion, but he also developed a bond with the Straw Hats already. So there's that connection there. Same thing with the Kung Fu Dugongs. They didn't really have a huge amount of association with Vivi. They do now, but that was partially because of the fact that, like, Luffy kind of, like, conquered them and made them his tiny army of adorableness. So those are why those are listed in the other ones and not, like, a tangential ally. There's the possibility that some of the ones I listed in the earlier episodes could tangentially be an ally as opposed to, like, straight up just, oh, these are an ally. But these are the main ones I wanted to put in here as, like, tangentially. Excuse me. And then going into the next section, I have the Sea Kings. Now, this does not mean that the Lord of the Coast is going to instantly become an ally to the Straw Hats. Although I would be interested to see what would happen if Luffy goes back to Fuchsia Village and sees the Lord of the Coast, and, like, it looks at Luffy and it recognizes him from when he punched him out, like, well, probably close to 3 years ago at this point in time, when Luffy punched out the Lord of the Coast, and if the Lord of the Coast just kind of, like, whimpers and, like, slinks away. Or what would have been also funny is if the Lord of the Coast has now become more of a protector to Fuchsia Village. as opposed to just this thing that eats all the ships that come into town, or will attack the ships in town. So I would put that there. But by the Sea Kings overall, I mean because of Shirahoshi being Poseidon. And so they're not directly allies to the Straw Hats, but because so many of the older Sea Kings, the large ones that we saw at Fishman Island and such, because of those ones, them being around, and with Shirahoshi straight up just being an ally of the Straw Hats at this point in time, with the Ryukyu Kingdom being an ally of them, considering they're technically Luffy's territory. Although I don't know if Luffy left a flag for them at all, although there's the possibility they may just have made a version of the Straw Hat flag and like fly that now to, beware to other pirates. But there wasn't really too much else with that in regards to the flag concept. But clearly when it comes to the Sea Kings, if Shirahoshi is involved, because let's put it this way, I'm pretty sure Im knows that she's an ancient weapon, or at least can deduce that she's an ancient weapon. And I'm pretty sure at some point Im would be very interested in trying to capture her and force Shirahoshi to work for him, to do his bidding and like control the Sea Kings. Hopefully she's been doing some practicing with that in regards to training her powers to communicate with the Sea Kings. Kind of the way that, that Momonosuke did training to be able to communicate with Zunisha. Hopefully Shirahoshi has been practicing that during the last couple of months. Since she met the Straw Hats and everything, and like maybe being at Reverie may have inspired her to want to train more with that so she can be more of a help at times, so Luffy doesn't call her, Weepy Hoshi anymore when he sees her again. And I just kind of have the idea that, yeah, if they're in, whenever there ends up being a final battle, probably not necessarily against Blackbeard, although depending on how the final battle plays out and how certain other allies show up, I would not be surprised if, Shirahoshi and, because they're going to have to use the Sea Kings to move the Noah to save people from Fishman Island if the Red Line collapses, which, whole big Red Line theory. If it ends up being that, then there's the good chance that, Shirahoshi will, use the Sea Kings to, she has to use the Sea Kings in order to move the ship and everything. So that way her and the rest of her kingdom can survive. I refer back to the Mighty Thor Jane Foster shirt that I am wearing. Asgard is not a place, it's a people. Fishman Island is not a place, it's a people. But, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with that in regards to Shirahoshi hopefully being able to use the Sea Kings to protect Fishman Island, but also tangentially have the Sea Kings go and help the Straw Hats. Because depending on certain circumstances, the Sea Kings can probably navigate their way through the Red Line, or not through the Red Line, through the, through the Grand Line and the Calm Mountain stuff. Then it would make sense if she would be able to, use the, if they could use the Sea Kings to help with transport of things on a large scale for different ones that don't have ships, or don't have ships that can get through areas as easily. That was just one of the thoughts that I had with that. I do think that it would make sense for Shirahoshi to have, of course, the different, to have the Sea Kings help. And then the next two kind of go hand in hand. Are the yellow great rhinoceros beetles and the pink hornets. And these are, of course, the two different bug forces that are led by Kabu for the rhinoceros beetles from Dressrosa, part of the Tontada tribe, and Bine, who is, of course, the one that can turn into the pink hornet that is also, one of the Tontadas that is on Dressrosa. Now, tangentially, now just straight up, Bine and Kabu are allies of the Straw Hats because they are part of the Tontada Pirates, and of course Leo is a member of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, so there's that. So there's just straight up allies there with those three. But both Kabu and Bine, because they have insect zones, are able to, communicate with the different bugs that are their species, and they can use them to help with, we saw them using with delivering messages to the other Tontattas. We saw them to help with flying Robin and Rebecca and Bartolomeo, over Dressrosa and helping them, with transportation that way. Also, I'm going to throw in like those blue foxes that the Tontattas had. They were like the Airstream foxes or whatever they were. Those are adorable. And I want one. But yeah, the hornets and the beetles, the rhinoceros beetles, would make perfect sense to, those would be good to help with delivering messages and stuff like that around on a battlefield, depending on stuff. I was trying to think if there was any other use for them. I mean, like the delivering messages are helping them transport to a degree in small batches. But, tangentially they would be like an ally to the Straw Hats because of, they're part of the crew and everything. Although I don't know how well they would do surviving outside of Dressrosa. But the other part of that is, of course, if the Tontatta, Straw Hat Grand Fleet, depending on how that ends up happening. I had a funny image. Give me a second. The Straw Hat Grand Fleet, depending on how that ends up happening and how they affect, like, the big event that the Straw Hat Grand Fleet will be a part of that they said in the narration. There's the whole theory that, a bunch of the Marines are away dealing with the Straw Hats, then the Straw Hat Grand Fleet can attack Marijois. Because while the world government, while the Tenryubito may have like their holy knights or whatever that they have there that help keep them safe or whatever, and their own bodyguards, that probably those bodyguards are very highly trained in regards to different, defensive techniques to protect the Tenryubito. But I had the image in my head of like, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet attacks Marijois, and just as a way of just like torturing in not like a harmful way, but just like messing with the messing around with the different Tenryubito. It's just like have Ain, Bine, and Kabu just release their bugs all over Marijois, and just have them like fly around and sting the Tenryubito, or jab them with like the rhinoceros beetle's horns or whatever, and just like chase them all over the place. Because like I don't think the Tenryubito would necessarily be the best when it would come to aim at times, but just like watching the Tenryubito run around like running away from all of the insects would be very entertaining. And I was trying to think, I don't think there's any other have them run around and then have the bugs chase them, and then chase them into like, I don't know, where Leo can like stitch them into the wall or something like that so they can't escape. That would be a good way of doing that. I would find that like a very good way of messing with the Tenryubito, of like, why can't I get off of this wall? It's like, no, you're sewn to the wall. Get used to it. That's where you're staying for a while. And then I was trying to think if there would be like another thing that they could use, because I was trying to think of how they could use the insects to help the slaves with help getting the slaves free, because like all the slaves have the collars. Depending on how well they all end up attacking, if the Straw Hat Grand Fleet attacked Marijois at the same time, then Bartolomeo would be there as well. And then as a way of getting all of the collars off of the slaves, literally what Bartolomeo could do would be to, use his barriers, and, use the barriers, wrap around the collars, and then just pull the collars apart, and the collars can explode inside of the barrier, and it's not going to escape. It's not going to, cause any damage outside of the barrier. And do it that way. Because I can't think of any other, because I don't think any of the other Grand Fleet members would necessarily have, well, Sai might be able to do like the whole, like, sense the hockey enough to pull off the collar, before it explodes and everything and fling it away. Don Chinchao might be able to do that, but I don't know if he's necessarily going to be there during that part of it. But, that would be an interesting way of doing that. But I went off topic, but yeah, like the bugs chasing the Tenryubito rats would be hilarious. Um, okay, and then I have two that are kind of an iffy tangential, iffy, allies by adjacent. So the first one are actually the news coups. So, um, the news coups are, the giant birds that work for Morgan, big news Morgans and such. Now the reason I have them on this list is because A, Morgan is, of course, the editor of the World Economic Times, and he, of course, loves a good story. And we've seen very much blatantly, very recently, in regards to what happened with certain things on Wano, that he is much, in that case, because it's a bigger story, he's more interested in printing the truth. What do you think Morgans would do if he found out that if he allied himself with the Straw Hats, that he would be able to find out about the true history of the world? Because I'm pretty sure Morgans would be interested in the true history of the world. In regards to the Void Century, in regards to that lost history, I'm sure he'd be very interested in that. And then I think there's a theory that like Morgans is like a former member of like the Roger Pirates in disguise because of his Zoan fruit. Depending on how that goes, I can buy it. But by tangentially, that would result in the fact of like if Morgans wants to end up finding out about the true history of the world, not like he's not gonna be on like on Laugh Tale when they find it or whatever. That's not gonna be the case. But the second he would get his hands on a lot of that information, he'd be printing it up just like, okay, get the presses rolling. We got to get all of this printed and we got to get it distributed everywhere. I don't care. It's not actually going to cost anything because this is something the entire world needs to know. I know a lot of people are banking on Vegapunk and his, the giant brain thing of like him being able to communicate with people all over the world at the same time. But we already have a communication system, at least somewhat set up for that, for basic stuff in regards to like getting out all the information about, with the World Economic Journal, with, with Morgans being able to print all of that. And then later on, Vegapunk can have stuff like more set up with his brain, with like being able to people to communicate around the world and have access to that type of information at a later date, because I don't know if that's something that he's going to be able to set up in time for them to do that. Whereas Morgans and the news coup are already set up as being able to deliver information all over the world. That was another thing I was slightly surprised that we didn't end up seeing in Film Red, was Morgans, because Uta is this world famous diva that is giving this concert and everything. And we don't see Morgans at all. We don't see Morgans there or see the news coup there, or like reporters. Well, there may have been some reporters in the crowd, but we didn't really see any that were like reporting on the concert, or like even see Morgans watching the concert, because that just like seems like something he would do. He would be interested in. But I don't know. Maybe he knew about her devil fruit and didn't want to risk falling asleep in the process. So I don't know. But that was just a thought that I just had with that. In regards to Morgans and Film Red. But yeah, by tangential connection, that way that would result in like the news coups being allies to the Straw Hats because they are distributing this information. I know Nami hasn't always been the happiest when it comes to the news coups at times, but she has her moments. But that would be a good way of like having the news coups and Morgans be able to be helpful to the Straw Hats in that regard. Look what happened with 3D2Y with Luffy when he shows up at Marineford and he rings the ox bell and he's got the tattoo and everything. It's Morgan's reporters that are the ones that are there that take the pictures, and those pictures are the ones that get distributed around the world. And I'm pretty sure Morgan's is smart enough to figure out pretty dang quickly what that meant, what the 3D2Y meant. So there's that there as well. That tangentially he is an ally. Yes, he's kind of like, he's the one that probably, well, we actually don't know who prints the bounty posters, if that's Morgans or if that's the Marines, and then like tangentially Morgans has the ability to print them. I don't know. That's never 100% explained. But, he's one that that has Luffy, one of Luffy's pictures with him in Gear 5th, and I'm pretty sure Morgan's, with as much information as Morgan's can get his hands on, I'm sure he's aware of some things. Maybe not what the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika is, or that it exists, but maybe that there's something going on here. I'm sure Morgan's has some interest in the Will of D, given the fact of, he is probably one of the ones that knew about, Gol D. Roger, particularly if he was a former member of the Roger crew. He would know Gol D. Roger, Portgas D. Ace, Monkey D. Garp, Monkey D. Luffy, going into Monkey D. Dragon in that regard. And we don't know how long the World Economic Times has been around. We know that it's been around at least since I think Law and Sanji were kids because of like the Germa comics. So there's that at least since they were kids, and that's a good 20 some years ago. So there's that the Economic Times has been around for a while, and it's also, it may have been around for a while, and then Morgan's took over as the editor, as the one that's in charge of it, and then like maybe slowly started to take it in a different direction. And yeah, he still prints some lies here and there because of what the world government needed him to print, but now because of everything that's happening in the world, because of what he sees, he's starting to print the truth more and more, because the truth is what will get him more ratings in this regard, more people buying the newspapers in this regard. So that'd be that. And then moving on to the last one is Camel the Super Penguin. That is Kuzan / Aokiji's traveling companion. So I just put the penguin on here because I like penguins. And I was just like, well, he's kind of he is an animal, and he does travel with Kuzan. We see him in at least some of the cover pages with Kuzan when we got some updates. I just trying to remember if we've seen him in the anime. I think we have seen him in the anime. I don't remember if he showed up at the end at end of Punk Hazard with Kuzan or not. I don't remember, but if he did, then he was there for that. But I don't really know about too much else. We don't know anything else about the penguin. He just travels with Kuzan. So given the fact that Kuzan is currently aligned with the Blackbeard pirates, there's the possibility that the penguin is there too. And just hanging out on the island or whatever. Or Kuzan did not want to risk his bird safety and he sent the birds somewhere else. I'm going to this island that's called Hachinosu. That is the home, current base of a Yonko that I am infiltrating. Possibly because I'm in Sword or because of other things. And I want to keep my penguin safe. So where can I put the penguin? That seems like something Aokiji or Kuzan would be concerned about, is keeping his friends safe in that regard. Although I don't remember if we ever find out how Kuzan and Camel the penguin meet. Also, Camel is a penguin that smokes, so I'm pretty sure the camel is kind of like after the Marlboro camel. Unfortunately. But yeah, he's a camel, or he's a camel that's called, he's a penguin that's called Camel. I don't know. So tangentially, he could be an ally. We don't know what the bird could do. It could know Conqueror's Haki for all we know, and just have no ambition for that. Probably not, but it might know at least some Haki of some kind, since it is stated that animals can learn Haki. It would make sense, maybe if he did or not. Also, he's a penguin, and being around Aokiji makes sense, because Aokiji can just make anywhere cold for a while. Then the penguin can just be like, nice and cool. That's what I had for the animal allies for the adjacent ones. There wasn't as many, but those are just some of the ones that I thought of. I did all the other allies in regards to the other animal allies at the moment, because I went through everything up through Wano, I think. If I missed any, I'm sorry. Please let me know in the comments, or if you think of another way that some of these could be helpful to the Straw Hats or an ally to the Straw Hats, please say that. Please put that in the comics. The next ones I'm probably going to do, or I'm going to go through and do some more of like the Straw Hat reunion videos in regards to reuniting with some of the people that are in like the New World. So, like, you know, Punk Hazard, Dressrosa, Totland, Zoe, stuff like that. Possibly what I see for reunions in regards to Wano and such. And go from there. And then I do intend on doing something where I do like an alternate version of the reunions where I want to talk about some stuff where it's like if the like if the Straw Hats met up with, former villains now. Like if Nami met up with Arlong and had to deal with him, or if, Usopp met up with Kuro, or if, Chopper met up with Wapol, or that type of stuff, like how I think those interactions would go down. Also, just straight up, obviously, if like current Usopp had to deal with, the Kuro that was there during the Syrup Village arc, he'd wipe the floor with him very easily. Very easily, because by then, by now, Usopp is definitely a lot stronger than Kuro was back then. But, I'm going to talk about some of that in those videos. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed the video. And since this is coming out pretty soon after the beginning of the new year, I hope you have had a decent to good year so far, and I hope that it goes well for the rest of the year. Bye.